I'm Khaldun Bshara. I'm an architect. I did my architecture in Birzeit, and then I did restoration degree, master degree in Leuven in Belgium. I wanted to know more about techniques and how to restore buildings because I was working by then in RIWAQ center in Ramallah, and we were conserving things, but I didn't know how to do it. So we were using trial and error, and this is like something important in my life, trial and error. So my life is basically a series of errors, and that I learn from them. Because I'm an architect and I do restoration, and these things, one architecture is dealing with the space, and restoration is dealing not on the space but deals also on memory. So I get interested more in space and memory. And when I wanted to see this relation between space and memory, and I wanted to study how Palestinians remember their spaces, I found the memory more tense and available and present in the refugee camps, or the refugees themselves, even if they are not living in the refugee camps. So this is how it came to my mind, like I have to do something, which I call it personal social responsibility. Like every person has social responsibility to do something to Palestine, and I think I was contributing to the architectural space and the restoration of heritage, but not to the Palestinians at large. And when I wanted to do something, I said, oh my God, nobody is doing something for the refugees. It doesn't mean that I'm doing the thing, but I think there is a big gap in our way, how we approach refugee camps, how we approach refugees problem. And the first time I wanted to do something, it was political science, actually. I sent like the thing that I want to deal with is space, politics, and memory, and all these citations. And my friends told me, are you crazy? You are going to study political science, rational takes on human beings, economy, and why people do this because they did this, and because this is more appropriate, this is Machiavellian, this is not, and so on. They said, you are not doing that. You should study anthropology. I said, what? What is anthropology? I did not know what is anthropology, which is Ilm al-Insan. So this is the human, and the logi is the science of a human, of the human. So I really Googled it because I didn't know what's anthropology. And then the next year I was applying to go to study anthropology, PhD, and then starting with master in anthropology and ending up with my PhD, which is about space and memory, poetics and politics of home in Palestinian diaspora. The main thing about this dissertation is how Palestinian refugees remember their homes of origin and how they transfer this memory to their younger generations. And the basic thing that I was searching is how they use the camp as a time machine, or how they use the camp as a memory device that bring them back and forward. So the camp becomes really something helpful, not destructive or not limiting for their abilities. The camp becomes the place where they practice memory for the sake of future, not for just to keep the memory alive and so on. So I was engaging with mainly like 3 bodies of literature, practices, because I've been looking on how people practice space, how they build actually. When they name the street, how they build homes, they build verandas. What does it mean to have a stone or not to have a stone in refugee camps? How they open windows to each other, how they have courtyards or they don't have courtyards, and so on. So I was looking on the building practices of refugees and the refugee camp, how they build homes, neighborhoods, guest houses, community centers, shops, and so on. This is one. And then I looked on the social relations of people across the camp itself, how they relate to each other, how they marry, how they love, how do their life, why I should buy hummus from that shop, not that shop, and why somebody will tell me go and pick tomatoes from that far shop, not this very close to my house shop. So these things are social relations, and I come to realize later that they are meaningful and nothing innocent. Like you cannot take it for granted, like he told you to go and pick tomatoes from that shop because the tomatoes there are so delicious. It turned out that that guy from Lid and the guy who is telling you to go and buy that tomatoes from that shop is also from Lid, and they have some relation, also marriage interrelation. So they were benefiting from each other. They were nothing like this is the best hummus in the world. No. So when I entered the camp, there was little things shockingly not rational for me. For instance, I go to a cafe. For the first week, I did not pay a single cafe, which is 1 shekel. It's fine. But it was amazing, like somebody will just say like this, paid, it means. Like somebody will say, okay, it's done. And for the first week I said, I want to pay, I am an architect, I get money from Ramallah, come on, I can pay like 10 cafes, I don't mind. And they said like 1 week you will not pay, later you will be able to pay. And then I discovered that anybody comes to the cafe in the morning, he will get his coffee, he will pay the 1 shekel, and he will put 1 shekel on the other side of the table. And it is for me, what is going on? Why that shekel is far and this shekel is here? So this shekel is to pay for that guy, and this shekel for somebody to come and to have somebody like myself will come after him and have coffee. So it was already paid. So when he just moved his hand, he already paid. He's not like searching his pocket to pay the coffee. Okay, and this is for me was very meaningful. Some people are mean, they will not pay, and some people are generous, will pay always. And I realized like the cafe people and the cafe shopkeepers are the controller. They know when they are not taking money from you and they will ask somebody else to pay. But the most shocking for me was like you might be putting that shekel for somebody you really hate and you have feud with him, but he will drink your coffee. So this kind of social relations that were beyond my imagination, like opening a small window, it was a big deal, or making a wedding in the street will interrupt all the life in the Jalazon camp. Anyway, this is how I came to go to the refugee camp, and how to, of course, living in the refugee camp was a great experience. I'm not romanticizing, because I think we claim we know the camp until we live in the camp. So this also helped me to deal with my Israeli friends. I don't have Israeli friends, by the way. But rhetorically, when we go outside in Europe, and so we go to conferences and so on, and they always say, like, we are in the same shoes. This is the first thing, that we are cousins and we are in the same shoes. I started to tell them, like, fuck off. You are not in the same shoes. You are not living in a refugee camp. You have good water. You have good electricity. You don't sacrifice your life just to fix some wiring in the camp. So don't bullshit me. So we are not in the same shoes. So I as a Palestinian who is not refugee, I'm married to a refugee, and I've been living with my friends who are refugees, and I did not notice. This is like blindness, cultural blindness. How do you, like I realized as an architect, like all those worked with me in restoration projects are from refugee camps. Oops. Suddenly I see them in the camp and in the workshop and in the site. So I say, oh my God, I did not notice. So of course I should not notice. They are normal human beings. So for me, the refugee camp, as my father taught me, like they're dangerous, dirty, and so on. This is like prejudices, we have it. Students from Birzeit who joined one workshop in the refugee camp in Jalazon, they were saying like these things. Like their fathers and their mothers and their relatives told them not to go to the refugee camp because it's dangerous. And after their workshop, they become friends with the refugee camp, and they come and give English classes to refugee kids and so on. So the thing, you need to make the small trip, this like 1 kilometer trip, and to have fun people, and you realize, okay, those people are normal. But they are not only normal, they do real things in the life, and their life is not only to appropriate a house in Ramallah or apartment or a car or something. They are longing for something else sometimes. Okay, material life is important, the good car. One of my informants told me, I was criticizing the loans from the banks, and why you need to make a loan, to have a loan and get a car, and you pay like, instead of paying 50,000 shekels, you pay like 70, and this is too much. And he said, but I am 50 years old. I want to enjoy this car when I'm going to enjoy it? I want it. So I'm saying like there are normal things that they seek material life like ours, but there are lots of symbols also happening in the camp, like when they name a street, or they name like Shara Ramle, or they name a shop like Saeed al-Hadithi. Well, Saeed al-Hadithi, why it's not Saeed al-Hadith? Then I realized that Hadithi is a village near Tel Aviv. So his shop name becomes Dr. Satellite Saeed al-Hadithi. So this is how people are named in the Jalazon. And this is how you know yourself. Where are you actually? Like some people will tell me, why are you living in a lid? I said, what is a lid? They said, this neighborhood is called the lid. And later I realized all the people nearby me are from Lid town. So they live together. Okay, this brings me to the non-conventional lecture now. How many are here from the refugee camps? That's great, more than 10. So you will be part of my research, okay? I will tell you 3 stories, and after that you will you can ask me whatever, but these stories are very dear to my heart, and I never wrote them in the dissertation. Of course, as an anthropologist, you have to do at least 2-3 things. One of them is structural interview, like you write questions with specific answers, like yes or no, or that thing or that thing. So this is structural. This is, you have to do it as if you want to have a quantitative research. You have to say like half of my informants are living in 1-floor building, 1-story building, or half of my informants live in apartment building with their brothers and fathers, with more than 15 persons in that structure. These are quantitative information that I needed to collect. But also I did what's called open, non-structured interview, which has like 10 questions you ask people about, especially for old people, about the before Nakba life, the habits, the Nakba movement from the village to the camp, the life in the camp, early camps. That these things you cannot like say, did you receive water from the UNRWA, or did you receive some aid from the UNRWA? You cannot say like yes or no. There are some equality information you just extract from people by open-ended questions. The third thing, which is the most important, is participant informant, which means to be part and participate in the activities in the camp, which means you work in the camp, you live in the camp, you participate in their weddings, mornings, and the prayers, and so on. And you just, it's basically you are spying. Without that bad يعني عميل بس عميل لصالحهم مش أو لصالح الدراسة. So my participation was mainly in the cafes. In the cafes where in Jalazon refugee camp we have more than 7 cafes. People gather around there, and usually there are 400 to 700 people. It depends if they have Classico or not. If they have this is one of my things. You will be participating with this thing. So if you have a Real Madrid-Barcelona match, you will have more than 400 kids for sure. Not kids, between 10 and 30. And they are all cheering for somebody. And of course, I will not give this to... you said refugee, who not refugee and living in the refugee camp, like myself. I sketched my house as the house of the land owner, but I don't want people who, I'm asking things about memory, about if they have keys, if they have certificates from the village of origin, something like that. So I don't want non-refugees to participate in something which is a different story, the perception of non-refugees to the refugee life and the houses and so on. So I'm only dealing with the refugees. I'm sorry. Okay. So my stories started in 1948. So 48, like most of the Palestinians were expelled from their houses, and everybody knows that. More than 400 villages destroyed and so on. So people came to the West Bank. Sometimes they spent like 2-3 months going until they settled in a refugee camp, but also they were under the trees, they were under the tents, they went first to their friends, to their relatives in Ramallah or wherever. Okay, but the story is about, the first story is flying tents, I call it. It's just, I want to tell 3 stories. One of them is a flying tents. One of them is the belly of the earth, باطن الأرض, الخيمة الطائرة, the belly of the earth, which is باطن الأرض. And the third story is the الكردي intestines, أحشاء الكردي. Okay? So these are 3 things. You have to keep track with these stories. The first story is like when the refugee camps were established by the Red Cross, not the UNRWA. UNRWA came later, like 1950, they started really work on the ground. But in 1948, there was the Red Cross, who was very active in taking care of the Palestinians. So they provided them with tents. And these tents, so refugees come together with like families or like villages in some area. So they build the tents in proximity to their families of the relatives or the families from the same village of origin. So Ladad wal Hal, Nabi together, and Abbasiyya together, and so on. Zainab together. And all these are the names of the main villages that the population for Jalazon came from, actually. Later, we have the UNRWA came, and instead of having these families together, like they built in the landscape near the trees, they put the tent and they put the pillar, and that's it. The UNRWA asked them to put them in rows, like grid-like camp. So they are moving the family structure or the really practiced structures in the village of origin from that clumsy or intimate relation tent to tent to a grid-like individuating everybody. Like everybody is equal to everybody, is very in the same distance from other tent. My story is not about this. It shows the relation between UNRWA trying to have a system and people, how they practice the system in their village of origin and trying to put this system in the landscape of Jalazon, for instance. But my story, which is a little bit funny, like the people had light color beige tents, okay? And usually they distributed 2 kinds of tents, 1 tent of 1 pillar for a family of less than 5 people or 3 people. And then they give like 5 people, and then more than 5 people had 2 pillar tents, and they put the pillars of 2 pillars together and the 1 pillar together. Actually, this information came from the people that I interviewed, but even reviewing the images of early camps, it proves them right, and they still remember how things happened. So the tents are white, okay, beige in color, and they have candles. And you just imagine, you just have a candle in the night, and you are standing here or doing something here. And then your image will be projected on the tent, like a huge monstrous. So if you are doing something really good, it will be projected. If you are doing some really other thing which is good, will be projected. Okay, so it's not funny. So what they did, people. What do you expect them to do? شو جابوا?
Actors to act something else.
Okay, actors to act something else. Other question. شو حطوا؟ حرامات. This is good solution. What else? طفل لمبة. But you need to see it like kids. Okay, they asked the UNRWA. They asked UNRWA to provide zifti, asphalt, and they colored the tents with asphalt, so they become dark and they are not color projecting. So this is like a stupid story, but shows people are pragmatic of how to deal with things. But my point is about miscommunication. Like this projected image could be really something normal that projected is really bad. I think there is a miscommunication between camp or between what's happening really in the tent. Can be decisive illusion. No, it's like ماكر أو خداع. Deceiving. Yes. So this is one story. Okay.